tears are okay. It's okay to show your feelings, and just because emotions come up when we share things, it doesn't mean that you are still stuck in it. It doesn't mean that um, you shouldn't feel anymore. If anything, I I'm sharing from a place that I feel like I've worked and healed through a lot of these things, and some things there's still many layers to it. So the healing is going to be lifelong, a longer journey. But for trigger warning, I will say that I do have a pretty, um, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I did have a pretty like abusive upbringing, childhood. And so if that brings up anything for you, or you're still healing from those things, again, please come back another time. um, so here goes. Um, for those of you who don't know, I am the oldest in my family. Um, my parents were immigrants from Southeast Asia. They moved here, met each other, or migrated here, met each other, and fell in love and got married. I'm the oldest of 8 now, but most of my childhood I was the oldest of 7. And there's 5 girls and 3 boys now. Um, my parents, they obviously, as immigrants, they didn't have education. And so they worked really hard when they got here, just trying to make a living, trying to support all of us. They got married really young. My mom was 15 and my dad was 18. Um, about a year after my mom and dad got married, they gave birth to me. And so, she was a 16-year-old trying to raise a baby while my dad went to work, and she was still finishing school. And so my grandmother took care of me for a chunk of like the first part of my life. Um, but as time passed, and I got a little older, and my mom and dad had more kids, um, they found themselves in a place, probably a tough place, I would imagine, to like find childcare or someone to watch us. And so at a very young age, um, they experimented with it, or I don't know if like it was just an emergency, but they started leaving me home alone with all of my siblings. And I think maybe I was 8 or 9. And wow, I didn't realize I was going to start off getting a little emotional. But a few years ago, I asked my dad, and I was like in my 20s. I said, Dad, what's your most proud, like your proudest moment or memory of me? And I was thinking he was going to share something about like something I accomplished in my adult life. And he took a moment and paused, and he said, my proudest memory of you, or my proudest moment of you, was when I knew I could leave you home alone with your siblings and you would be fine. And that like just broke my heart, because I was like, I was a kid. I did not want to be left home alone. But that kind of gives you an understanding of what my childhood was like. I was the oldest. I quickly became the caregiver and the protector of my siblings. I had, at a very young age, the responsibility to take care of everyone while they were gone for like, it almost felt like days. Um, and quite honestly, my memory, I think because of like all of the trauma that I've experienced, I don't even have a good recollection or understanding of time right now. Like when I think back to my childhood, it's all such a blur. Um, but it felt like days, because I would put all of my siblings to sleep, and if they cried in the middle of the night, I would have to wake up to go check up on them. And I would cook for us. I was very young and I was cooking and bathing them, taking care of them. And um, yeah, I just assumed all of those responsibilities. I didn't have a choice, and everyone needed to be taken care of. Um, yeah, and another thing is we have like a big family. I have a lot of relatives, but for some reason, my parents always moved us away from them. And so we never had support, um, like occasional babysitters, like the older cousins to come and watch us. Like we could have, but they always moved us away from them. So not only were we physically neglected, but also emotionally, because if you're not there physically, how can how can they make emotional bonds and connections with us? We were left to just like fend for ourselves and um, entertain ourselves. I mean, back then we didn't have electronic devices. We would just play music on like I don't know, what are those 6 CD like players where you can put CDs in, or cassette tapes. We'd just play music or run around the backyard and unattended, no adult. We lived in the countryside too, so there was like no kids in the neighborhood. Um, and we would just ride bikes in circles or catch grasshoppers in the grass or chase chickens. Like we were on in the countryside, so at least some of those memories were kind of pleasant, but we shouldn't have been left alone as often as were. So on top of that, at some point my dad decided he didn't want my mom to work anymore, and so my mom at a very young age started staying home with us, but she was never present. She would sleep in, and I would still be doing all the things that I was used to doing, like making sure everyone got ready for the day, making sure we were at the right place at the right time at the bus stops, picking them up, um, like walking to pick them up and stuff like that. And then she had very little patience. My mom, I can tell now looking back, she struggled with depression. Um, she's never seen a specialist and she's never been diagnosed, but she does show signs of um, like bipolar or narcissism. I quite can't tell, and I don't want to just label her without a professional, but I will say that she has traits of those, and it was really hard. There were a lot of things that traumatized me and my siblings a lot that my mom had done. Um, I feel like she probably had a really tough upbringing too that I'm learning to understand more now, but she wasn't present and she was very manipulative and she gaslit us. Um, there was just this constant feeling of like anxiety whenever she was awake from her sleep. And it's almost like the whole world would go dark. Um, so another part of my childhood that was very normal was just being beaten up. And over time, it just, my parents got really creative with it. And I say creative to be kind, but it felt like torture, really. But afterwards, they would keep saying, like, we're only doing this because we love you and you need to learn. But I could never understand as a child how you could use the word love but hurt someone you love. That concept never ever made sense to me, and it still doesn't till this day. But for some reason, I think that it implanted in me the belief that people who love you will hurt you, I guess. Maybe subconsciously. We also moved around a lot, and um, moving around a lot caused me to just kind of give up on making friends because every time I tried, we would move and I would go through this like whole grief process. And um, so I just kind of stopped making friends at a young age. I can't even pinpoint ages anymore. I can't say like when I was 10, when I was 12. Like, again, I've lost concept of time. For some reason, I've always felt like this present age that I'm in right now. I've always felt older. I've always felt, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to put it to words, and I don't know if that makes sense. I'm actually trying really hard right now through writing my book on kind of pinpointing the timeline. So I'm kind of my way. I'm working my way forward, I guess. I'm starting from when I was born to now so that I can recall things. So moving on from my childhood to my teenage years, and this is where I think a lot of you, my friends who I've met on here, this is a very important piece of me that I've been wanting to share for a long time. But I've been working through it quite a bit this year, and so I finally feel ready to share. Um, I I was 15 and I fell in love with a guy. My Up until that point, I was pretty depressed. Um, when I look back at the way I used to write, I was in a very dark place, having that many responsibilities and burdens. And I'm not going to lie, I did have a lot of suicidal ideation. Um, Life was just really hard, and I didn't want to live anymore. There, yeah, from time to time, I was always kind of like this optimistic, but then also very much when I felt burnt out and exhausted with life, I felt like it was just too much. Um, so a guy came along and I we talked for a bit. We were friends for maybe like 6 months or something like that. He's 4 years older than me, and yeah, I fell in love with him. We talked about our future together, and I was 15, guys. I was very mature for my age. He says that's what he said that he was like very attracted to, was the fact that I was one of the youngest like girls he talked to, but then my mindset was very mature, and the conversations we had when we first started dating or talking, he said that like they were very mature. I don't know. I don't even recall what we talked about really. But we dated for 9 months, and guys, I didn't have any love or affection from my parents. And so when I fell in love with this guy, he was my everything. And the same was for him. Like his parents were better than mine, but I think he had his own struggles too. So we both just fell really hard for each other, and we we talked about like our future together. We talked about, even like having children together someday. We dreamt of just growing old together. And like when I looked back at some of the letters we wrote to each other, we dated only 3 months and we were already talking about spending a life together. He's also Hmong as well. And his family, he came from like a family that was very like highly respected in our community. And so when I first started dating him, my parents actually told me that he was too good for me and that like I shouldn't date him. And I don't know, like I wanted to prove to them that like I deserved to have this guy in my life. They weren't against him. Like they really liked him. If anything, they made me feel like, yeah, they just constantly made me feel like I wasn't worthy of having him in my life. And so, yeah, like, but he quickly got to know my parents. throughout the time we were dating and saw how abusive they were. And he really just wanted to rescue me out of that experience, out of that house. And so this will come as a shock to you guys. We ended up getting married. So at the age of 15, I got married to an 18-year-old guy. He was already done with high school. I was still a sophomore. Um, and I thought that I had escaped the darkness, the hell that I was living for my entire childhood. Um, but I got married and overnight I went from a teenager to being a wife. And this is something that I haven't shared with many of you at all. But the relationship that I keep bringing up is actually my marriage. We are now divorced, which is something that happened very recently. So if you do the math, I will tell you right now, I was married for 18 years to this man who I loved very deeply. The first year of our marriage was actually hell. I didn't know that I could have my own thoughts and opinions. My parents never allowed us to have any sort of autonomy. And so I had briefly exchanged emails with some guy that my mom gave my information to. And so going into this marriage with my husband, then my ex-husband, he used that against me every single day, of our first year. And he would bring it up, and every night I would beg and I would apologize and I would say I'm sorry for talking to him. That was something that happened before we got married, but he brought it up so often, and every night he would pick a fight, and every night I would beg and ask him what I could do to gain his trust, for him to not be angry at me. Or he would lock me out of our room, and we lived with his entire family. So that was also very embarrassing. That same year, as I was still navigating what life as a wife looked like, I also lost my grandmother, the woman who raised me for, my first year of life. And then I also started noticing, in that same year, a lot of changes in my body, hormonally and physically. There were just a lot of things going on, but I didn't have the understanding of what I do now. And I just thought it was normal. And so I just kept going on in life. I got a job at 16, been working since. So I've been working for, about 17 years, and never stopped. I never thought of my future. I never thought I had an opportunity, because once you get married, it's just about building a family or something like that. And so I never stopped working, always I think the one thing I picked up from my dad was just work diligently and work hard, to survive. And now that I look back, I wish I went to college. I didn't, but I feel very blessed because I've always been given really great opportunities, and I've always been hired by some of the best employers. I just feel super lucky in that sense, that I've been honored and respected in the skills and the strengths and the gifts that I bring to the table wherever I go. But going back to talking about my marriage, I bring that up because it's a very huge part of my life, because it's more than half my life that I spent with this man. And about 4 years after our marriage, I discovered a lot of things about him that I didn't know. He had been lying for quite a while, and it started to explain why the first few years of our marriage was so hard. He actually like kicked me out of the house once, but because of my culture, the shame I would bring to my family, and also because of our religion, um, I like I had to set aside everything to make that marriage work. And yeah, like my mom and dad, they were not happy about me getting married in the first place, but they also knew culturally it was very normal for us to get married that young. And so I wanted to prove that I would make it work. And honestly, in my mind, the life that I lived with my parents felt worse than what I was going through with my ex husband at the time. I, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how I felt, how I thought I felt I would feel better staying than returning to my parents. It's kind of like what I've been talking about the last few live streams. It's like, what do you do when you're in a place where you don't feel safe? And as humans or as children, we're programmed to return home. Our place of home is supposed to be safety, but what do you do when home isn't safe? You know? And so, um, yeah, I somehow found it in me a way to suppress how I felt and protect my family's image by staying in this marriage. Um, that year that I found out about his affair and his addictions, all these things that I did not know about him, um, I was also diagnosed with something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. I realized my body had been kind of breaking down on me and showing me signs, but I just never really paid attention to it. I didn't really have benefits or medical insurance until then, and so I started seeking like specialists to figure out what was going on with me. All while all of these things are happening, and during that time, I was still very much talking to my parents too, but it was just very toxic, like the relationship that um, my parents and I have. It's because I feel so deeply and I can empathize. I feel like I didn't know how to put boundaries, and so I was there for them. I don't know how many times I've like saved my parents' marriage, and no child should ever bear that weight. No child should ever have to um, keep their parents' marriage together. Um, that's not they. Yeah, they shouldn't have that responsibility. Um, I'm trying to see where I'm at right now. So with PCOS also comes a very low chance of being able to conceive and have children. So at this point, not only have I gone through everything as a child and married to a guy that I thought I knew and come to realize I didn't know, I was also having to face this reality that I may never be able to have children. And I come from a big family, and he comes from a very big family too. That was never at like the forefront of my mind. I never processed that at all. I always thought, yeah, I loved raising my brothers and sisters. I love children. Like, I'm going to be a mother someday, just not now. I was young. I was not ready to be a mom at that time, but the fact that out of at the age of like 19, 20, I was already diagnosed with that, it just like stripped away the opportunity or the choice that I had. You know, like it's one thing to say like, we'll start having kids when I'm ready. And then it's another thing to be faced with, oh, you have a very, very little chance to if you don't do all these things. So I was going through a lot and I didn't realize that it had to, all of the physical things were connected to the emotional and mental things that I had been kind of trying to work through. Um, I worked really hard. Um, the voice of my parents saying that back when I was a teenager and dating him, saying that this man is too good for you. Like, I truly believed still, even after finding out about his behavior and his lies and his addictions, I still felt like I had to prove something. And so I just kept forgiving him over and over and over again. And I kept trying to show up and be a good wife, try to do all the things that I could to support him. He wanted to go to school. I worked so he could go to school, and then he dropped out, and we had to pay off his loans with no degree to show up for it. Um, he went through some health things, and I picked up a second job and, like took care of him while working out. Yeah, it was just very unhealthy. And because I grew up seeing my dad do that for my mom, I thought that how you love someone is giving up yourself, um, and putting the other person first. And so the reason why I'm so passionate about self-love now is because that's something I learned in like the last 5 or 6 years, and even more so in the last year. Um, I sought out therapy about 6 years ago, and that's when my journey began. The original reason why I looked for a therapist was because I found myself in a place of like just feeling like a lot of my memories were gone, and I started to get kind of concerned. And so I thought maybe if I, like meet a therapist and work through some things, I might recall memories from my childhood or something. But it did in some ways, and also didn't really. But it helped me really understand myself. And I've always been growth oriented. I've always been like, even before that, I've always been reading or watching content that helped me become a better person, because I've always wanted to be like the best version of myself. And maybe some of that is also due to trauma. Growing up, like I never heard, I'm proud of you. I've never heard, you are doing such a great job. I can see that like none of that. And so I feel like deep down inside, I have this desire to always do more or produce more or achieve more. And for a long time, I think it was for validation. But now it's for myself, and I'm proud of myself. Um, and like, I often have to go back and forth between doing something for myself because I enjoy it, and then taking a break when I feel like I need it, because um, just that attitude of like wanting to do, it can get really exhausting, and we can get burnt out when we're constantly like trying to um, get so much done. So from the fourth year of our marriage until last year, we had sought out books, group therapy, couples therapy, accountability groups, mentorships, programs. We've gone to our church and talked to leaders, trying to find help for my ex-husband, and his addiction. It started to eat away at us. He became a professional liar, and I fell for it every single time. I believed him. I thought surely he would become a better person. Surely he would hold onto his promises. And if he really loved me, things will get better. And he said he loves me. So I just kept telling myself that things would. And um, I've shared about the work that I did previous to now, and it was being a foster parent to um, foster children in Florida. But what I didn't share was that we did that together. Um, we never had children of our own. After being diagnosed with PCOS when I was around 20, I found this new passion for working with children. And I felt like it healed a part of me that I thought that I would never be able to experience. And so instead of just allowing myself to drown in the possibility of never having children, I used all that energy to just give that love that I had for children to the children that I worked with, whether it be in the nonprofits that I worked for, or in the child care centers, or the families that I worked for, or whether it be for um, our nieces or nephews, or my sisters and brothers. Um, I just started to kind of use that energy that I would pour into my own children someday, to the lives around me, to the children around me. And that was enough for me. Like, honestly, if I never have children, it's okay, because I feel like I spent the bigger chunk of my life just pouring into people's lives. And now I've been able to enjoy just doing that in different ways, being able to nurture myself and help nurture others. Even if I never got to carry a child in my womb or hold a baby, in my arms that I can call my own, I get invited into spaces where people allow me to do that with them. And it's such a blessing to be a godmother to my nephew here, to be an aunt to so many kids, because my sisters and brothers have children. Um, I'm sorry I keep hopping back and forth, but my story just ebbs and flows just like yours. It ebbs and flows. There's beautiful moments and there's hard moments. And going back to my marriage, after just seeking out so much help and putting in so many conversations, I broke down so many times I don't even know. And the more he lied to me, the smaller the trust became between us. And I just felt like whatever trust I had with him just began to break down into smaller pieces. And I didn't know what was real anymore. I couldn't look at him and believe a thing he said to me, because he just would look at me with such an innocent look and lie to me. And I believed every word he said for so long. And if not for my own commitment to my journey of healing from my own childhood wounds and trauma, I would never have pinpointed how much he was abusing me, how much he was manipulating me and gaslighting me and making me think that I was going crazy, when my body, my instinct, my gut and my mind and my heart, everything was telling me something was wrong with him. But because of that one thing my parents said, and because of the way that the person that I loved and thought that loved me and I trusted, because of how he made me feel, I believed them over what I was experiencing. I abandoned myself, the compass that was inside me telling me he's off. There's something going on. He's lying to you. I didn't believe that. Didn't trust myself. After working with the foster children that we worked with last year, it became very clear um, that there were a lot of things that he had not worked through. It revealed a lot of true colors that um, I think if anyone is a parent here, or if you hope to be someday, I just want you to know, um, parenting brings up things that you have to work through. Just like being in a relationship, you find and discover things about yourself that you didn't realize you still need to work through. Parenting does the same thing. And the thing is, you can't get away from it. You can't hide it. You gotta face it. Excuse me. And so while we were foster parents, we were provided like awesome training and resources. But he's just not on the same page with me. He has so much that he was trying to like carry and suppress because of all the lies, that he couldn't be a good partner with the work that I was doing. I was the employee for the agency, and he was just like a support partner in the house with me. But the way he showed up was, I thought that we had worked through things and things would change, but no. In the two no yeah in the year that we lived there, he had lied so much that I just began to question everything. And so 2022, last year, started to come to an end, and we had just worked through one of the biggest confessions he's ever had, like one of the biggest betrayals we've ever gone through. We had a separation for about a month. I took care of all the children by myself because I know I can. I know I've been put through so much with him that I told the agency, like, even if he's not here, I can still do this. Because at the end of the day, this is my passion. To love and care for children, it's mine. It's not his. Even though he was there to support me. So I continued working for about 5 more months. And after the 1 month separation, we talked, we met up, and I don't know. I saw changes in him that I never thought I would ever see in him, and it looked good. And so I thought, oh, you know what? One last chance. I know. Up until that point, I was still like, one last chance. So we got back together. We worked and did life together for another 4 or 5 months. We came very close to adopting a little girl who I'm absolutely obsessed with and in love with. And I don't know. He just carried on, like he went on as if like nothing happened, and I was just left in shock of like, wait, we're never going to talk about what happened? We're never going to talk about your betrayal or your lies? Um and believe me, I'm a person who needs to have conversations, and I tried with him. I tried to tell him how I felt. I tried to tell him um I even gave him step by step, like, how can we learn to build trust again, because that was the biggest thing of all. But he kept saying, no, as long as we love each other, that's like, love wins over everything. But deep down inside, it was kind of struggling again. Like, how does someone who says they love you lie to you? How does someone who says they love you just betray you and then move on and continue to say, I love you? How does someone who says they love you like hurt you and then like act like everything's normal and fine again? Like, I just could never ever understand that. And so I kind of just, not like I ignored it, but what could I have done? I just kept focusing on myself. That's what I kept telling myself, is just take care of yourself and focus on yourself, focus on your own health, your own growth, your own healing. At the end of the day, you can't change him. You can only change yourself. And went about for the rest of the year, focusing on just being a foster mom to our little girl. And then towards the end of the year, we found out that um, out of the blue, the system, the court decided she could return back to her siblings and her guardian. And so we were so happy for her, even though we were so torn. It was so hard for me because she and I had such a sweet bond, and she healed the pieces of myself that I never thought like could happen. Um, but yeah, I was so happy that she could be with her siblings, because at the end of the day, biological family is so important to us. And that's what we deserve, is to be with our very own flesh and blood. So it was scheduled. It was October. No, November, because October is my birthday. So we celebrated my birthday with her. And then November, we sent her home to be with her family. And we were just going through a bunch of transitions. I quit my job because I needed a break, because the 15 months that I worked as a foster mom, I never got a break. You're I'm talking 24 hours. I'm literally working as a mother, and I got paid by the state, but it's not a lot. But it's what I loved, and I took a huge pay cut to have this experience and to offer up the love that these children deserved from their parents but didn't get. And so I tried my best to give what they deserved. And after we found out that she was going back, I knew I was going to grieve, just not having her in my life and not being, her mother the way that we had that I had been for her for a year, because she was with us for a year. In the 15 months that we worked as foster parents, we had over 18 children in our home. Um, the youngest was 4 weeks and the oldest was 15 years old. But our little 2-year old girl, she was with us the longest. Yeah, so after she left and I quit, we moved out of the house. We were living with friends. I was looking for a job. I was grieving not being her mom anymore, grieving the fact that we couldn't adopt her, but then also still very much grieving whatever was going on with our marriage. I didn't know where it was headed. I didn't know what was going to happen. But thankfully, the agency that I worked for, they provided therapy for me prior to that for about like 3 months. And things just started to become a lot clearer. So the beginning of December, I started to process a lot and work through a lot of the anger that I had inside of me. I know we don't ever want to admit that we're angry or mad, but I didn't like the person I saw in the mirror. I woke up every day and I was just full of anger, and I would suppress it, and I would just try my best to be happy and optimistic and positive. And, I always try to look for the good in life and every day. But deep down inside, there was so much going on that I couldn't talk about until I started seeing this therapist. And she, thankfully, I feel like it wasn't a coincidence at all that she had experience working previously with addicts. And as I told her my story, she made it so clear to me that long term, like chronic addicts who have been addicted to something for most of their life, they have a lot of tendencies, and the way that they get around with lying and betraying people and gaslighting and manipulating people, basically abusing them. It's all done very meticulously. And so when I realized that, kind of shock, and I didn't know what to do. I was like thinking about my religion, thinking about my culture again. But this time around, we had gone through so much that I just felt like, I've like given my whole entire, like over half of my life, and nothing has changed. And will he ever change? And the thing that she brought up to me, what she brought to my attention is, um, she said to me, "You're growth oriented, and he's not, and you've been focusing on your growth journey and healing, and he isn't. And so you will find yourself at the end of the road. You will find yourself at actually, yeah, she said you'll find yourself at a fork in the road. A fork in the road is when you come to a point in your life where there's only two choices, two paths you can go." And she said to me, "You will either, in one direction, you will either have understanding that at some point in his life, he will get better and he will become a better person. And you will just be patient with him, continue being patient with him like you already have been. Or you will realize that you cannot be limited to your growth and he is keeping you from growing. And so you'll go your own way." She's never told me what I should do, but she's always put a lot on my mind to think about, like reality wise. Another question she asked me was, if you didn't marry him at the age of 15 and you met him now as an adult, would you marry him? Guys, why did I feel so bad? I mean, why do I feel bad that in that moment I knew my answer right away? And it was no. I was not drawn or attracted to the man he had become as we grew together. We grew up together basically. I was 15 and he was 18. Um, we grew up together, and he didn't like the fact that I changed and that I wasn't the person he met. But I was 15. I was still a teenager. We're supposed to be growing and evolving as human beings. We don't stay the same. We can't stay the same. We're always changing. And I don't know why he thought that I would stay that way. I definitely challenged him a lot. I was very adventurous. I loved going out into nature. I loved, just discovering places, and I loved traveling. But I was limited to what I could do because he was very much comfortable just staying home, not doing anything, not meeting people. I loved meeting new people. I loved making friends. I loved hosting and having people over. There were so many things that we like butt heads about, but somehow we made it through 18 years. It was through those therapy sessions with my last therapist in Florida that really made it clear, even though it seemed like we worked through some things, it just became clear that I didn't want to waste another 18 years or even another 5 years being stuck in a marriage where I just continuously felt stuck in, and felt ignored, felt unsafe in this marriage, and like my safety was just not regarded at all. Like he didn't care about it. I've talked to him so many times, and like he had anger issues. He used to like punch walls and throw things, and I would fear for my life. Um, he got into like collecting weapons and stuff, and I felt anxious every single day. Like at the back of my mind, I was like, there's one day he's going to be so mad at me, he may just take my life. And I know I shouldn't even think that way, but the anger that I could see in his eyes made me live in fear and anxiety. Even something as simple as driving somewhere. I didn't feel safe in the car with him. I would offer to drive, but he would never let me drive. Um, and yeah, I know I don't have to share any of these things, but I feel like it's such a huge part of my own healing journey, because then I realized in this last year, in 2022, that I escaped the abuse of my parents, the nightmare that I lived as a child and a teenager, only to be taken into another form of abuse. And for some reason, I lied to myself that that was better. And I held on to that lie for 18 years. And, you know, my sister that I live with now, she's such an angel. She is my protector, and she's my baby sister, but she's, in some ways, she's like my big sister, because she reminded me of my worth, and and along with some friends too, but she was like, like, you deserve happiness, you deserve someone who loves you the way you love, and you've given everything. And I truly believe that too. Now, it was hard for me to accept it. I never once imagined that I would divorce, because in my culture, and in many cultures, I'm sure you guys probably can agree, you get ostracized as a divorcee. And in my culture, it doesn't even matter if, like, you like, he never physically abused me. He never, like, laid his hands on me. But kind of like what Nino was talking about the other day, and what Gaucho was talking about the other day, is that the psychological abuse that you go through is detrimental. It, like, physical wounds, like, they hurt in the moment, but over time they heal and you forget the pain. You don't forget how it made you feel in the moment, but it's not visible, and you don't, it's not, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say that emotional and psychological abuse is worse, but it's just different, and it sticks with you for a long, long time. Um, and so, yeah, I escaped physical, emotional, and psychological abuse only to continue living in a marriage that had a lot of emotional and psychological abuse. But again, I abandoned myself. And so I'm so thankful for the therapists that I've met. Currently, right now, I'm not seeing a therapist, but as I shared before, I started sharing my story. I did recently go through a mastermind, and I have been fully committed to my own mental health and emotional journey for quite a while now. So I'm hopeful. I spent the earlier part of this year grieving a lot. When I made the decision to leave my ex husband, I knew at that point that I had given that marriage everything, and I decided I'm going to accept people misunderstanding me and judging me if it means I get to have peace and I get to feel safe again. And now I wake up and look at myself in the mirror, and I'm so proud. Um, and I love myself. And I'm so excited for the rest of my life, because now I know what I am deserving of and what I'm worthy of. Um, you know, even when I told him that I was done that night, he still blamed me and pointed fingers at me. And on the last day, when I packed my stuff, he wrote me a letter, and I read it. And deep down inside, I was like, maybe he'll fight for me. Maybe he'll finally wake up and he'll want to change, and our marriage will, maybe there's still hope. You see how much I believe, how optimistic I am. I'm always hoping. But after I read that letter he gave me, it became so clear that I made the right decision. And I'll tell you this, since I left him, my body has healed in ways that I never expected. So there is this connection, guys. That's why I fully believe it. That when you're in an unhealthy or toxic environment and you're not seeking help, your body, you can get sick. You can experience a lot of physical illness and changes, and your immune system is weak. And working through trauma, I'm still experiencing that, but there are other things that I am starting to see that I am healing because I'm no longer in that environment and I'm now safe. And I still have to remind myself that from time to time. I know that I am now in control of my life and no one um, can force me to do something I don't want to do. No one can manipulate me or gaslight me anymore. I know that I have a voice and I can use it. Um, I now know that I have a purpose, and all the things that I have dreamt of that I had wished to do while we were married that I didn't feel supported in and I had to bury, I get to dig those things up again from deep down inside of me, and I get to do it with everything that I have now, with all my passion and time. I get to pour into people's lives. I get to meet new people now. I get to do this live streaming, and maybe after today I might lose some friends or some viewers, but that doesn't matter because if at the end of the day one person is touched or one person feels seen or one person feels encouraged, then I've done my life's work. I keep saying that. I've lived out my purpose by helping someone. Because on my own journey, I felt so alone for so long. On this journey, I felt like I couldn't be honest, I couldn't share. And it's not until just like the last 4 or 5 years that I've met friends that I felt safe enough to say, hey, like, I'm not doing okay. I'm struggling. I'm having a really hard time. Or I'm hurting and I don't know how to do this anymore. And I've had friends during those seasons of my life that helped me get through the trials and challenges that I faced during that time. But at the end of the day, I'm proud because I gave that relationship and that marriage everything that I had. I have no regrets. Honestly, I'm not even angry at him because even though it was his addiction and his lies that broke us, um, I'm more angry. I found myself more angry at myself for abandoning myself. And that was a reminder for me, like, never again will you allow yourself to quiet the voice inside you or to ignore the compass that is inside you that is going to guide you in life. Never again. And I'm still working on loving myself and honoring myself. But I think I can do that for you and for all my friends, old and new, because of the journey I'm on. I'm learning to love myself in ways that I've always been able to for friends. But I feel like I can do it even better now because of what I went through. And because of the seasons of loneliness, I know how it feels to carry a lot of heavy things without anyone knowing. And I know the importance and the desire that each person can possibly have, just wanting a space to be able to be vulnerable. You sharing your struggles with me doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. Like Loki said, asking for help is it's not weakness. Like don't look don't look at it as a sign of weakness. I believe it takes so much courage to ask for help. I believe it takes so much courage to invite someone into the messiness of your life. Whatever you think may be messy, everyone has something. You're not the only one. And the more I realized that, the more comfortable I became with my own discomfort and my own, messed up life, I guess, quote unquote, messed up. But those things don't define me. And Loki and I always talk about this, but everything good or bad that we've experienced has somehow turned out for good in a way. There's been a lesson learned, there's been wisdom gained. And quite honestly, I know I loved him so well. And now I know that I don't think I will love someone the same. I think I'll be able to love someone better, someone that loves the way I love too. But I'll know now how to look for it because I had no sense of anything being 15. I mean, our brains aren't even developed until we're in our mid 20s. So yes, there are days where I'm still getting used to being single. And then there are days where I celebrate the freedom I have now. There are days where I miss him in certain ways, like when I'm sick, and I feel weak and I don't want to get up. I miss having someone take care of me. But in all honesty, he only knew how to take care of me because I always took care of him and everything. And so those days when I can get up out of bed and I can find the energy to cook for myself, I have so much appreciation for the love that I'm able to give to myself. And yeah, I'm on this journey to just relearn how to mother myself and care for myself in ways that I had waited all my life for someone to give me. I feel like this year the clarity I've gained is, why do I need to wait when I can give that to myself? And it's not to say that I don't want to have someone in my life someday. I do, and I see it, and I desire it someday. But in that marriage, I felt so alone. And like the quote I shared yesterday, what's even more lonely is to be with someone who makes you feel alone. Like, I'm physically alone and I'm fine with that. I love spending time with myself. I love being my own company and the presence of the peace that I provide for myself. But it was really hard being with someone, being married, having this title of being a wife, but deep down feeling so alone. And guys, one thing I learned is you can find love and still feel lonely. You can find love and still feel depressed. Those things a person cannot fill. Things, objects, experiences, all of those things cannot fill that loneliness deep down inside of you. It needs to be your own love and respect for yourself, your own self-worth. You need to value yourself more than anyone else. You need to prioritize what you need. And I feel like when you can provide that for yourself, you can show up for your friends, for your relationships, for your family as a whole entire being and not needing anything from people. I don't want to need a person in my life because then I wouldn't be able to live without them. I just want a person in my life because of who they are. I saw a TikTok video this morning and he said that and I'm like, wow, that's so true. Like when in reality, I'm at a point in my life now where I don't need someone, but I want someone. To be wanted is so much better than to be needed. At least that's my own opinion. Because don't we all desire to just be accepted for who we are, not for what we do? If I need someone, then I'm just needing them to fill this emptiness in me. But if I want someone, it's because I desire their presence and who they are. I still have so much to learn. I'm still healing from a lot every single day, but I'm learning to be gentle and kind to myself on this journey. And I hope that along the way I can help other people. My own journey has led me to this place of wanting to help people. And that's why this year I want to become a life coach. I want to um, just partner up with people on their own journeys to heal from trauma, abuse, from being in relationships with people who have narcissistic traits, because he did. And that's another thing that I realized too was he will never ever actually feel bad. He will never ever actually follow through with his promises. Like the reality hit me and I had to put two on two together and realize, oh wow, he knows that I will stay. He knows that I will keep forgiving. That right there, my friends, is manipulation. Is when a person takes advantage of your kindness because of the patterns that you've shown them time and time again, every time they've betrayed you or lied to you. Please do not tolerate that. I've tolerated it. And yes, I have high tolerance. But do I? Like, should I? Should you? No. You deserve to be respected and honored and loved. So now, my definition of love is different. Love is not just a word, it's an action. If you say you love someone, I hope your actions match up with what you say. I guess I'll talk about those things in another live stream if you guys want. I think that's the most of, or that's pretty much the update of my story. How long did I take? Wow, just a little over an